You're listening to Trek FM.
Hello and welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th anniversary rewatch of all 729 Star Trek adventures, from Broken Bow, Oklahoma, all the way to Yorktown Base and Star Trek Beyond. I'm one of your hosts for today, Lee Hutchison from Earl Grey, and I'm joined by Mike from Stage 9 for 2 more episodes. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing okay, how are you?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing these episodes and wrapping up our week. So, yeah, do you want to give people a wee introduction to Chrysalis?
Sure. This is the follow-up to the episode whose name I forget, where they...
Statistical Possibilities.
There you go. Yeah, where they bring in the other genetically enhanced people who are working with Bashir in order to become more suited to society, I guess, or whatever they're trying to do. And they pose as Starfleet personnel and sneak their way onto Deep Space Nine because they're convinced that they have a way of helping. What's her name? One of them. I forget her name. Do you remember it?
No.
Okay, yeah. Well, that one character who doesn't talk in the first episode, and they're like, "Oh, we figured out a way to fix her problem and make her more talkative." And Bashir's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that." And it works, and he falls in love with her, and hijinks ensue. So, what did you think of Chrysalis?
Yeah, I think it kind of was summed up there that we couldn't remember one of the main characters' names, despite the fact we probably watched this within the past few days. It's not an episode that I don't think I've ever watched it again since I saw it for the first time. I mean, it's an okay episode. I think I get a bit more out of it. Like, I work in mental health, and I can almost understand Bashir's eagerness, believing that because he's had one victory in helping to cure this person, that's it all sorted for the long term. That in mental health, it's all about constant care, constantly working towards goals. And sometimes when you think, oh, we've had a great day today, we've achieved something, and then the next day you've maybe relapsed or it's gone back 3 steps. And I think that Bashir has just got over enthusiastic here, that he's had a success and that this girl's life's been revolutionized, but he doesn't seem to be conscious that everything's so fragile, it can all collapse again so quickly. And it's not the most memorable episode. I think the genetically enhanced individuals are quite charming and amusing. I think the first time we've seen in Star Trek a musical number brings a smile to my face when I watch it. It's a bit cheesy, but it's kind of, I think the music works quite well and it's shot quite interestingly enough, so it's something a bit different for Star Trek. So yeah, there's not much I can really kind of say about the episode itself. Most of what I get out of it is totally unrelated to this episode.
Yeah, that musical number. I had this on in the background while I was at work. We were like, doing paperwork or whatever, and this thing was just kind of like playing off in the corner, and the musical number starts, and then it keeps going and going, and my coworker kind of turns to me and they're like, "Feels like they kind of overdid this one, eh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe just a little bit." He's like, "What is this, My Fair Lady?" I'm like, pretty much, yeah.
It's just something that's just like, I just find it funny. Like, I would love to know the reason behind it, where like behind the scenes they went, musical number, this is what we're gonna have here, let's build up. And like when they're doing the kind of the voice tuning, as it were, it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I remember there was a musical number, and as they were kind of tuning up, I thought, oh, was that it? Yeah, it must have been. And then it keeps going and going, and it just cuts to Bashir every time, that he's just like, he's so in awe of them. And I just love it if it was something like kind of an airplane sort of thing, where he's looking at them at the beginning like, oh, this is wonderful, and by the end he's just like, oh my god, this is terrible. And then it cuts back to Bashir, and he's just, you can imagine with like a noose or something like that, or he's just left the room. That's things like that would just kind of creep into your head when you're just thinking, this is kind of absurd.
Yeah. That scene didn't particularly work well. I mean, on the whole, I guess the episode's not bad. It's weird. There's very, very few bad episodes of Deep Space Nine, but this is certainly one of the lesser episodes of Deep Space Nine. I really sort of don't buy Bashir's like head over heels falling in love with this person. I mean, I guess I can kind of see it, in that, for the reasons that he states. This is, something that he's been looking for his entire life, someone who's essentially sort of like an equal to him in terms of their genetic enhancements and intelligence and all that stuff. And, he can finally have that, that sort of like experience, because I mean, I guess it's frustrating for him because when he's talking to normal people, he's much more intelligent than they are, and he might have trouble relating to them, or they might have trouble relating to him. And I guess this is kind of the point of the episode. Like, when I was watching it, I was like, does he not see what he's doing? Does he not see why this won't work? Does he not see how he's pushing her too far and is going to get her to sort of withdraw? And, all of those things happen, and he's completely blind to it. Even when, she stops talking to him, and he's like, I'll do anything that you need me to do. And she's like, yeah, I need you to back off for a minute because I can't do this. And he's like, oh no, I don't, it's cool, you don't need to be afraid of me, because I love you, and then let's go to Ryza. And it's like, what do you think? No, Bashir,
it's season 1 Bashir all over, isn't it? I don't buy into his behavior like this just now, but in like season 1 or 2, whatever, that's atypical Bashir. Like, I don't think even it's very ethical what he does as well. Like, I'm not one to tell him what to do or anything like that, but I think like the idea that he's immediately falling in love with this girl, he's hitting on her, he's got the champagne out, and just like 3 days earlier she had like a childhood mentality that she was totally repressed under severe mental health conditions, and that Bashir's already kind of hitting on her. That maybe it's just being my line of work, but I think that's not the most professional thing in the world to do. It's, it would be like me waiting outside my work and then, someone coming out and going, oh, hey, you want to come with me for a pizza or something like that? Is just, it doesn't feel right. It feels really unethical and like creepy.
Yeah, no, and O'Brien has that scene where he's like, don't you see how this is not good? Like, and he's like, what, why? And O'Brien's like, well, for one thing, you're her doctor. And he's like, not anymore. And it's like, that doesn't really
cringing
count. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's what they were going for in the episode. I guess it is. But I don't buy the fact that he would do that in the first place. You know what I mean?
I think one last thing we need to see on this episode is Brandon Shamatella, please do a podcast on this musical number. I think you could dedicate a whole hour to talking about the absurdity and wonderfulness of that musical beat.
Yeah, I don't think we need that, but yeah. All right, Go for it.
Yes. So, Extreme Risk then, Mike. Do you want to give people a lowdown on that one?
Sure. B'Elanna has become obsessed with engaging in extremely risky behavior on the holodeck and in other places, and she's hurting herself sometimes to see if she can feel. And hijinks ensue, I guess.
Yeah, I think this episode it's brilliant and then annoying at the same time. That the annoying part out of the way, the Malons return, the idiots of the galaxy that once again are only this time we meet a Malon is they're dumping rubbish, and all of them love dumping rubbish and salvaging things. That they're not a race of any sort of refined kind of growth or writing. It's just they love dumping rubbish, and the crew sneering at them the whole time. That even at the end of the episode when they've got a ship in distress in the atmosphere that could be doomed, Voyager just goes, oh well, bye, and just leave. That doesn't seem very Federation. Like, they talk about, Picard and Hugh, and we should extend an olive branch to our enemy, and the Klingons and Federation coming together. It's this, they're like, well, we don't like that they love polluting things. We're not going to have anything to do with them or ever help them. bye, and they just leave at the end. That annoys me. The Delta Flyer, interesting, but I think the meat and bones of this episode is the B'Elanna stuff, and I think it's fantastic. It's the same problem, but the same issue almost that I had with Janeway in Night, that it's really good character growth, development, but it's in isolation. It's almost just limited to this one episode, and it's never dealt with again. Much like Chrysalis, like there's a lot of crossover between what I see and experience in my day-to-day work in life. That depression is something that's so powerful, and touch wood, I've never had it, but I've been surrounded by people that have, and seeing what it can be like for them, that they push people away, that they take part in an activity like self-harm, for example. And I think that it's really brave of Star Trek to really kind of tackle self-harm in this way quite head-on, without kind of it being some sort of big allegory. They say this is a character that's self-harming, that is doing harm to himself, that is suffering from depression. And I would love to have seen this a bit more kind of carried out over a few episodes, or even expressed since we found out about the Maquis being dead. It just feels like, oh wow, this is powerful stuff, but it could be even better if they kind of plotted it a bit better. Here it was in a few episodes, and here it is in a few episodes after. I think how Chakotay and Janeway both deal with B'Elanna is excellent, and it's the sort of stuff I would love to have seen throughout Voyager, that kind of conflict, that butting of heads, that Janeway's trying to care for B'Elanna, she's trying to reach out to her and help her, whereas Chakotay comes in, and it's great to see him being that kind of a real commander, because that's what he was to B'Elanna. This was his captain. He comes in and goes, right, enough of this. What's going on here? Get to the bottom of it. And while I think there's some issues with that, I think it's true to that relationship and that character, that this Chakotay is not meant to come in as the polished professional in this respect. He's coming in as someone that cares, and he just wants to find out what Taurus has been doing, why she's been watching her fellow Maquis be slaughtered. And I think that's excellent, and Roxanne Dawson delivers a brilliant performance in this role. And yeah, if the Malon element was maybe removed, I think this could be a classic Voyager episode.
Yeah, they say that she's been, having trouble with depression for like weeks or even months, they're saying, and then it seems like it would make sense for it to go all the way back to when she found out about the Maquis in Hunters, right, would be the episode from season 4. And I like that continuity for sure, bringing it back to, that being the cause of the depression and everything. But I really kind of wish, they knew this episode was coming up. I wish they kind of would have gone back in some of the earlier episodes, especially from this season, and just been like, okay, let's start seeding this idea in. This would have been perfect for Night, when you're kind of like seeing how everyone else is dealing with, the ship being in the void. You could definitely, touch on B'Elanna in that episode, and I think it would have made this episode even more effective. As it stands, I think it works really well for the same reasons that you're saying. It's cool that they were able to deal with the issue, and it's cool that they were able to tie it back to something which is in the character's past, and not just something that they made up all of a sudden, in order to deal with the issue, So I think that all of that stuff, works really well. And as far as the Malon issue is concerned, it is weird, because like I had the same thought, because even in that first episode in Night, where you see the Malon, they seem to go out of their way by saying like, well, this guy is kind of a jerk, but that doesn't mean they all are. Like they say that, like he's like, no one else knows about the void. This is my own personal dumping ground, and if I were to bring this back to my people, I wouldn't have a job anymore. And it's like, okay, so it's not like your race is into space travel just so that they can dump waste from space travel, so let's see someone else, and or whatever. But I guess that's just kind of how these things work.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. It's something I would love to have seen. That we say at the beginning of the show, 729 episodes, and how many times do we see them break out of those kind of, these aliens are like this, and this is what they do, this is what they're best at, and no more. It can create a bit of kind of tediousness in how they kind of approach things. And the Malons, I think we see them in one more episode after this. Juggernaut or whatever it is, where like once again it's all about them being messy and polluting, and it's like, come on, I'd love to learn actually about what Malon societies are like a bit more, and we see a bit of it, what it's like on the kind of the Malon planet, and I've maybe seen an episode there, like they've got enough time in Voyager to dip into that. So hey, it's just a minor frustration. I think it overlooks exciting episode in terms of character work, and we get the Delta Flyer, which is going to be part of the family for the remaining 3 years.
Yeah, I guess that's something which we forgot about, right? The Delta Flyer, because there's something where they actually do, like, there's an earlier episode where they're like, oh man, this space shuttle is so cramped, oh boy, I can't believe this, and Seven's like, why don't you build a new one? And they're like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then here they actually do it. That's pretty cool. They build it in like a day, which is a little weird, but okay, that's cool. So
forget the Russians and American space race. It's the Voyager and the Malon one. It's the shuttle, race to the stars over time.
Yep. And that is one other weird thing. Usually, the crew is not like super vindictive or whatever. Like the way that I was expecting this to play out is they're like, the Malon are having trouble getting out of the atmosphere. Okay, see if they need help, and then they go and help them. But here, they're like, the Malon are having trouble getting out of the atmosphere, which means they're probably going to die. And Janeway's like, ha ha, all right, go to warp. And then they just leave them there, That's kind of weird.
It's ridiculous. It just makes me crack up when I watched it the first time going, what? But hey-ho, they can add it to the list of violations when she gets back to Earth.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that brings up our little block to an end, Mike. So if people want to get in contact with you and tell you about how great the Malons are, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and you can also find me here on Trek FM doing Stage 9, where we talk about the people who make Star Trek.
Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo, and you can find me on the Earl Grey podcast, where we do not talk about garbage men of space. Thanks very much for joining us for this week, and tomorrow you've got another exciting block to look forward to, so thanks for joining us. Bye!